Welcome to Just Therapy, the podcast where we dive into mental health, family, faith, and living with traditional and conservative values. Whether you're looking for practical advice, seeking clarity, or simply want to strengthen the foundation of your life, you're in the right place. Together with fellow counselors, we'll tackle tough topics, answer your most pressing questions, and explore how traditional values and modern care can work hand in hand to build stronger, healthier lives. Please note that the content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to replace professional mental health care, diagnose, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your own licensed mental health provider or medical professional regarding your specific situation. While I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and my guests are also professional counselors, the discussions in this podcast are meant to offer general insights and should not be taken as personalized therapeutic advice. Listening to this podcast does not establish a therapist-client relationship with me or any of my guests. If you are experiencing a mental health crisis or have thoughts of harming yourself or others, please contact a mental health professional, call 911, or go to the nearest emergency room immediately. You can also reach out to a crisis hotline such as the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 in the United States for immediate support. Every individual's journey is unique, and what works for one person may not be suitable for another, so please use discretion and seek appropriate care as needed. In this episode, I'm honored to welcome Dr. John Delony, a mental health expert, best-selling author, and host of the Dr. John Delony Show. With over 20 years of experience in counseling, crisis response, and higher education, and as the author of Own Your Past, Change Your Future, Redefining Anxiety, and his latest release, Building a Non-Anxious Life, Dr. Delony brings a wealth of knowledge and practical advice to the conversation. Please note that this interview was originally recorded last year, but its insights are as valuable as ever. In this episode, Dr. Delony shares how anxiety is often a symptom of deeper issues and why addressing those root causes through daily choices like embracing reality, fostering connection, and choosing freedom is essential for living a peaceful life. He opens up about how writing his latest book transformed his own life and offers practical, actionable steps to help anyone manage anxiety and build resilience. We also discuss thought-provoking topics like the role of struggle in personal growth, the power of belief in something greater than yourself, and why many of us feel stuck despite having more information than ever. Whether you're a parent, a professional, or someone navigating life's challenges, this episode is packed with actionable wisdom to guide you towards a non-anxious life. Get ready for a powerful and inspiring conversation. Let's dive in. Welcome, John. It is so amazing to have you here.
It's super amazing to talk to a real therapist, Lisa. It's awesome.
Oh, you don't talk to many therapists? I know you do a lot of podcasts, but you don't talk to other therapists on podcasts, or?
I do. Oh, well, not on podcasts.
Yeah.
My friends, and they're usually calling in being like, hey, you blew this one, or I'm stealing this from you, or I'm calling them asking for some wisdom on how to handle a call. But
yeah, I get
that. I don't do many podcasts. That's fantastic.
Oh, good. Well, it's funny that you don't do many podcasts because I feel like I've seen you or heard you on podcasts.
I do a million podcasts, just not with therapists. Yeah,
I gotcha. Yeah. Okay, so maybe I'm like one of the first. I don't know.
Yes, excellent.
Woo! All right, I'm very excited to be the first. So I recently rewatched your interview with Mind Pump guys. I think that's a fabulous episode. I know you've been on Jordan Peterson's podcast, so really cool stuff that you're doing. And you just wrote another book called Building a Non-Anxious Life, which if you guys are watching the YouTube video, I'm holding this up. But if you're listening on Apple, definitely go and watch the interview over on YouTube because you get to see him in his cool studio and it's really nice. I'm very envious of what you have going on there.
I was just looking at your place thinking, God, your house looks so cozy and wonderful. It looks so great.
Oh, my husband will be so happy to hear that. We have a very, very small house and we do the best we can. So,
oh, dude, it looks so warm and inviting. It's awesome.
Thanks. Well, I'm in South Carolina. And you're in Tennessee, right? Is that where you are?
In Nashville.
Nashville. Yep. Awesome. Yeah, we love Nashville. I need to come and visit more often. It's such a great place. But I know I probably have some listeners that don't know who you are, and I could definitely read your bio, but could you just share with my audience a little bit, who you are and what you do and how you help people?
Yeah, I'm John, and I'm married. I got 2 kids, a 13-year-old and a 7-year-old, and a whole bunch of chickens and a couple of dogs. And we live out in the woods outside of Nashville in Tennessee. And I worked in higher ed. I was a dean of students for about 2 decades, and I was a high school teacher for a few years. And in that time, I also partnered with the police departments to do crisis response and all kind of chaotic stuff and death notifications and things. And then several years ago, right in 2020, at the very beginning of 2020, I transitioned out and joined this media company, Ramsey Solutions, to put out a show and start writing books and to hit the road and start speaking all over the country. And so, in a million years, I don't think any of us thought it would take off like it has, and it just right place, right time. And so now I have the Dr. John Delony show, and I co-host another show and write books, and we're trying to figure out what we're doing.
That's awesome. Every day it sounds like it's, figuring it out. I've listened to your show, watched your show, and I love your authenticity. I loved your transparency. And when you came out with this book, I was so excited, knew I wanted to get my hands on it. So thank you to your team for first of all sending it. That was amazing. But I've been reading it. And so in your book, you say that I think it's on page 81. I have it right here. It says writing
Oh
this is
no.
no, you're totally fine. This really stuck out to me. It says, "Writing this book changed me, and I knew what was coming." So, how did this book change you? Like, how did writing this book change you? I guess that's my big
Well,
question.
so I wrote so I've had my own experiences with anxiety in a pretty gnarly way back in 2010, 11, and I guess into 2012. I didn't know what it was at the time. And but I've been down that road. And then I moved to Nashville to work at Belmont University, and it was amazing, and they're wonderful. And then I transitioned to this company, and I wrote Own Your Past, Change Your Future, and it was a number one. It was a big, all fancy book, and everything went well. And I thought I'd earned a lot of cachet. And so I sat down with a publishing team, and they're like, "Hey, we need you to put another book out." And I wanted to write a book on adult loneliness and friendship, and or a marriage book. And they were like, "Yeah, that's cute. You're going to write a book on anxiety." And I was like,
Mm.
"No, I'm kind of done talking. I've been talking about that for 20 years with my students and their families." And they were like, "Okay, that's cool, but that's what you're going to write about." So, um, I started into the project, and I just didn't want to do it. I was tired of talking about it. I was bored of it, and it was annoying. And about halfway through, I had a pretty gnarly interaction with my wife and a couple of friends that she had flown up to see me. And I realized, oh, I don't write this book because I'm not living this life anymore.
Mm.
And I'm on a bullet train back to the chaos that was a decade or more ago. And so sitting down and writing this book was really it was really an extended scientific journaling process is what it was. But it was a hard reflection in the mirror. Like, if you're going to sit here and tell the country how to live a non-anxious life, who do you think you are if you're not living this stuff? And then I had to answer those hard questions myself. And so the book went from, I mean, this is basic. The manuscript you're holding, the finished product there is probably iteration 3. It started as a very clinical, Huberman-esque kind of like, here's how anxiety works in your body, and here's the neurochemistry and all that. And then it ended up dude, I'm pulling up a seat at the bar with you, pass the nachos, and here's what this looks like. And so it made it much more readable, but I had to change my life in the process. And it's kind of like, you got 5 pounds to lose or 25 pounds to lose, or you have to have a gnarly conversation with your romantic partner, and you just don't want to. That's how I'm heading into this. I was like, oh man, this is
Yeah.
gonna be awful, because I knew it was on the other side of it, which was a complete and total life change.
Yeah. No, I can understand that. And that's kind of the sense I got was when, because I think this is 80 pages in when you say this, and I'm reading up till then, I'm like, wow, you are, not just like talking the talk, you're like walking the walk. And that's so refreshing as a therapist to come across another therapist who's like, I am in it with you. I get it. Like, this is me. I don't have all the answers, but this is what I know to work. This is what I know to be true for just people in general. Could you take us through the different, because it's really a step. I mean, it's really steps for building a non-anxious life, and you have a different steps that you go through. Can you talk a little bit about each one?
How about this? I'll kind of lay them out,
Okay.
and then you can pick a couple.
Okay,
Otherwise, I can
perfect.
talk. I can get real annoying, and people are
Yeah.
like, "All right, that's enough of that guy." Um,
We don't want that.
so here's the premise. The premise is, it started about a decade ago when I
Mhm.
was sitting in a nerd conference, a mental health nerd conference, just surrounded by nerds, and somebody was walking through the genetic expression for ADHD.
Mhm.
And during this presentation, it was just, everyone was just nerding out. And he said, "Hey, by the way, this cannot it cannot be entirely genetic because that's not how genes work.
Mhm.
Genes don't all change in a 10-year period. That just isn't how they work.
Mhm.
And so there could be a genetic proponent to this, but there's something way bigger going on. And he had some hypotheses, but I left and that planted a seed. And here was the seed. What if the ADHD mind and body's right? What if it's responding to its environment exactly as it was designed to? And later on, when I was working with college students who were suicidal all the time, like, what if their depression is right? And then as we circle back to anxiety, what if anxiousness is right? What would that mean? Because it's easy to answer the question, how do I stop being anxious? We can do that pharmacologically. We can do that with breathing. We can do that. The harder question is, what kind of life have we created that these alarms are going off all the time,
Mhm.
that everyone's anxious all the time? That's a way harder question to answer, or a way more indicting question to answer about our society, about everything. And so the proposal I make in the book is, I think our anxiety for most of us is right. I think that whether it's that low level burn or it's generalized anxiety disorder, or social anxiety disorder, if your body has identified other people as not safe and the alarms go off, those alarms are working perfectly.
Mhm.
The question is, why is your body identifying other people as not safe? That's a way more important question to answer than how do we stop being anxious around other people.
Right.
So, um, I try to distill it down in a roadmap, not for mental health professionals, although it works, and not for neuroscientists, although it works. It's for people who read one book a year, people who are exhausted single moms with 3 kids, just trying to get through the day and stop being so anxious. What would I tell them? And it was, here's some choices you can make similar to brushing your teeth. If you start feeling anxious, here's where we're going to start looking. And it is choosing reality, choosing connection, choosing freedom, choosing mindfulness, choosing health and healing, and choosing belief. And if you look at those things on a wheel, right? Like, think of those as spokes on a wheel. Whenever my body starts to feel anxious, whenever my body starts to feel burned out, overstressed, I want to think of that as a smoke alarm in my kitchen. That's not the issue. What's issue is the fire that's making that smoke. So those are 6 areas where 99% of the time, and I made that statistic up, most of the time, that's where the fires are in our life. And that's what's going to help shut that alarm system off. So um, each one of those places is where I'm going to direct myself. And for most of us, a couple of those are simple. If you tell me to go exercise, I feel everything in my life is better when I exercise. I love doing it. If you tell me like I have to believe in something bigger than myself, that's hard.
Right.
If you tell me I have to have a hard conversation with my wife, I'd rather just avoid that. Right. So that means I got to go to those areas. Right.
Right.
And so that's kind of that's the premise. And those are the 6 daily choices, just like brushing your teeth. If you do those things over time, that pervasive anxiety goes away. And then when you do feel anxious, you've got a roadmap towards where that pain's coming from.
Yeah, I love your roadmap. I feel as though there's, you can focus on each one of those. And like you said, some of them you do automatically. For me, it's health and wellness. I go to the gym, I eat healthy, I drink my water, I get my sleep. But the other ones about belief maybe sometimes are hard just because of what's going on in the world or choosing reality. Sometimes reality, you don't even know what you're looking at because of technology and AI. Like you're like, what is reality here? Or even mindfulness, like can be tough some days when you got the kids and you're driving all over the place and you got to make dinner. I mean, this is just me, so it's tough. So I have a way of kind of like reining myself in and focusing on what's important. And for me, it's focusing on my values. Knowing my top values and priorities, which helps me with my anxiety. And I'm sure if I looked at your wheel, I could probably, you know, okay, well, choosing, health and wellness is a priority and a value. Belief, faith is a value. Choosing reality, that's probably more about like, well, when you think about choosing reality, how do you explain that to people? Because
Yeah. So somebody will come sit with me and they'll come sit in your office
Mhm.
and ask for therapy. And they'll say, my husband's not doing X, Y, or Z. How do I get them to do this? Or I can't sleep at night. I really want to sleep and I feel like I'm kind of depressed. So when I ask somebody to choose reality, here's what I'm asking them to do. What's the state of your marriage? when your kids walk in the door and they go, ugh, and they go in the room and shut the door, it's easy to say, oh, they're just being teenagers.
Right.
If we're going to choose reality, the reality is your body knows that that relationship is fractured and it's not okay. You can sit on a couch next to your partner and they're on their iPad and you're on your iPhone, and you can tell yourself, no, we hang out every night.
Right.
But your body knows that dude is 6,000 miles away from you in his mind, and you're 6,000 miles away from him and yours. And so choosing reality, like, how much money do you actually owe? Because if you owe six figures in student loans and 2 car payments and a mortgage, your body would be failing you if it let you sleep all night, because it is under threat, right?
Right.
And so I don't think our body's the problem. Choosing reality is those hard data points.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really going to get fired? Is your boss really abusive? Yes. But I make good money. I don't care about that right now. Let's choose reality. Is your boss safe? No. Right? That's choosing reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. And then for a lot of people, I mean, I don't know. I have like a gut intuition when my kid comes home and she's, she's a teenager and something's, I'm just like, I can tell. I don't know. I just know something's up. But she's also that at that developmental age where I'm like, do I let it ride? Do I have a conversation with her? How do you, it's tough, but at least I'm aware and I'm
That's it. It's,
paying
it's, it's awareness.
attention.
That's it.
Yeah. And I'm
And
paying attention.
what we found out in the literature on anxiety is, like, I've got a couple of buddies who've rolled off the SEAL teams. They're not anxious on mission,
Right.
and their missions are madness. Like what
Mhm.
we see in TV, like, it's worse than that. Like, their missions are madness,
Mhm.
but they've trained so much, and they've got a gang, they got a team, so they're not anxious. They may be nervous, but they're not anxious. And anxiety often comes when our bodies know that you are not in the driver's seat of your own life. Somebody else is driving or nobody's driving. You can do incredibly challenging and difficult and hard things if your body knows you have a plan and you're in the driver's seat.
Mhm.
So awareness is just what I would call the nerd word for being in your own driver's seat. So
Mhm.
it's when your daughter walks in and slams the door and you go, ugh, she's so ungrateful. Now we're down a rabbit hole.
Right.
It's when you go, she's a teenager. I don't even know whether to go in there or not go in there. I'm going to sit here quietly for a minute. Cool. Your body knows you're driving, so it doesn't have to sound the alarms. You're driving. Even if you're not getting to a great place, it knows you're driving, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I like that. Okay. All right. Makes sense. And when you say choose freedom, how do you explain that one?
So again, in the nerd literature, it's agency or autonomy.
Gotcha.
If I am in an abusive working relationship, my boss is a jerk. You're going to work until this job's done, and then I'm going to give you another job, or I'm drastically underpaid, or they treat women or people of color in my business a little bit differently than other, right? Yet I'm going to have to keep showing up because I owe Toyota Motor Company money, or Nissan money, or I owe a mortgage company money, or student loan, Sally Mae money. They are running my life. I am, and I hate to use this word, but it's the only word I got. I'm a slave to them. I have to do what they say because I've chained myself to them with 72 months at 6% interest, or at 30 freaking years of, right? And so we don't think of debt in that way. We think of it as, I get a car now. I get the house I want right now. And I think when we take away agency or autonomy, our body instantly sounds the alarms. Hey, we're not safe.
Mhm.
If your body knows you can get fired tomorrow and you lose your house and your car, it can't let you sleep, right? It can't let you be present in a romantic moment. Well, it doesn't want you to have sex. It wants you to not die, right?
Right. Right.
And so choosing freedom is about looking at your life, whether it's financial, whether it is the clutter we're surrounded with and our quote unquote collections and our pretty things and or our calendars, um, our boundaries. How many of us have mother-in-laws still telling us what we're doing for the holidays? Doesn't matter whether we can afford it. Doesn't matter whether we're so exhausted on travel. I travel a lot, and the number of haggard, exhausted families schlepping through an airport
Mhm.
towards like a travel soccer game. That travel soccer coach is telling you they're running your life. You're not in
Mhm.
control of your life. They are.
Yeah.
And you think you're in control because you hired them. Now they are running your life. And so when I say choose freedom, I want people to be honest, write down a piece of paper. Who owns my life? Is it a bank? Is it a financial company? Is it a soccer coach? Is it a college I'm so desperate for my kid to get into? Who's running my life? And my promise is, as you begin to unhook these or untether yourself from all these other places and you choose freedom and agency, I will decide.
Mhm.
If you and your spouse owe nobody anything, there's a different, you breathe differently. Your body is not under threat, because if you get fired, it's annoying. It's not catastrophic, right?
Right.
And I just don't think our culture lets us think that way anymore. And so when I tell people choose freedom, I want them to look at who's running their life and begin to disassociate from those relationships as best they can.
Cool. Okay. I like that. I like how you, I mean, I think the other steps or the other areas are pretty self-explanatory. The
Right.
choose,
Pretty classical.
yeah,
Yeah.
like choose connection,
Yeah.
choose health and healing, choose mindfulness, and choosing belief. Maybe, I don't know. Could you go into a little bit about the belief? Because um, what are we believing, or what are we trying to? Where do we want to focus our belief on? I think I have an
Yeah.
idea.
My original like aha moment was from the great Esther Perel, who was walking through, and she studies
Relation.
romantic trans um romantic relationships among refugees, and how religious systems move in migrations, right? And then Jordan Peterson picked it up really on the other side of the aisle, if you will, and it was this really beautiful symphony of the same topic, which is, for all of human history, we did two things. We climbed out of our tents or climbed out of our cave, and we looked up at the sky and said, "Dear God, or gods, please rain, or my family will die."
Mm,
Because that's what we had. Or all of a community, all of a tribe, all of a civilization was guided by some sort of belief in a deity of some sort that gave people their roles, their opportunities, their mates, their rules, their operating principles. And yes, there was oppression and all that involved in that, but it gave structure. And in the last 200 years, we have just melted that structure. And at the same time, we learned how to drill real deep. And now we have these cool things in our house called faucets, and we just turn the faucet and water comes out. And instead of having to hunt for food that may or may not be there, or it may not rain for 2 calendar years and half the tribe dies because of the drought, now I can push a button on my cell phone and food just shows up at my house. And so in that process, as a collective society, as a world, we've gotten very, very arrogant about our sense of primacy in this process, as though water will never run out, as though food never is short. And I think COVID was the first time collectively we all freaked out because we couldn't get certain things, or there was entire lots of trucks that were missing one tiny little chip and the whole thing wouldn't run. And we didn't have a collective psychology for that. And so when I say belief, what we've done in a very short sliver of history is we've begun to not worship a collective story, a collective narrative, or collective God, if you will. We've begun to, and you know these from grad school, we've begun to seek self-actualization. That self is the top of this pyramid. And when the self gets to the top of the pyramid, we're realized really quickly the self can't hold. The self was never designed to hold up the universe. And when it does, you start worshiping how you feel. And that's when you start going down. I don't feel good. I don't like this. I'm uncomfortable.
yeah.
And all those things that we know now are really good for us to feel uncomfortable and to like have hardships and things. So the idea being, have evolved. We are designed to worship. And that means we have to take a knee to something bigger than ourselves. My family and I are Christians, so that's the God that we take a knee in front of. I'm not going to prescribe that for you. And I've got friends who are devout atheists who are some of my best friends in the world, and they believe deeply in the birth and life and death and resurrection of nature, that they're going to die and become part of the soil, and then a tree's going to, whatever you believe in, great. But you cannot be the center of the universe. So when your body recognizes you are the center of your world, it will crumble under that weight. That weight is anxiety,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
End of story.
Mhm.
And so I think it's that existential angst that we have to begin to unwind, and you only unwind that through vulnerability and submission.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. That was great. I can get on board with the self-actualization. See a lot of that in the younger clients that I have.
Yeah.
They don't have it's hard. It's tough out there for a lot of people. And I go back to there's a lot of pain in this world, and part of me is like, well, having this struggle is actually really good for you, believe it or not. I know that
Yeah.
might seem kind of weird, but you have a choice here in how you want to move through it and show up in the world, and what do you want to who do you want to be on the other side of this? It's really a I don't know. I've been through it myself in my 20s. I went through something, probably more of depression than anxiety, but then I've also battled with anxiety too as a new mom, when we
Right.
first
Yep.
had our first kid, and then with the second kid, and now that they get older, I still have my moments. But I like how you did, I like how you said that it's the anxiety is always right. The anxiety is a symptom of something deeper that's going on. So anxiety really isn't the problem. What is the problem? Like, did you ever do that in grad school? The problem
Oh,
isn't
dude.
the problem is blah,
It's
blah, blah.
yeah. And the problem, there's always a problem behind the problem. And I
Right.
think as a therapist, that's an important
Yeah.
question is,
Yeah.
they ask question A, what are they really asking me here?
Right.
Right. What are they
Yeah.
really asking? And going back to your younger clients, I think it's been really like in vogue to pile up on them. And
Mhm.
I don't think it's their fault. I
Mm-mm.
think, like I got just, I mean, I grew up in Texas and I've been this big since I was seventh grade. And so, as a Texas high school football kid, if you ever saw Friday Night Lights, that's all real. It's
Mhm.
bananas. And man, I got beat up a lot and I got yelled at by grown men a lot. And so my impulse is I don't want my kids to experience that because it was lonely and isolating and there was moments of embarrassment and
Mhm.
shame. And so it's like me taking my kids to a weight room and taking all the weight off the bar. I don't want y'all to get squished like your old man did.
Mhm.
And that makes perfect sense. And I think as a culture, as a country, we're realizing, oh, we sent a generation of kids to the gym with no weights on the bar and nobody got hurt, but nobody got any stronger
Right.
either.
Right.
And so now on the back end, do I think screaming and yelling and shoving high school kids is right? No. But man, did I get a lot stronger and a lot tougher and a lot more resilient? And did I find that I was a much more capable than I thought I was? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
So it's this strange, weird both and.
Mhm.
So I don't think it's worth beating up that younger generation. I
Right.
think we're in a desperate educational moment to say you have to inject hard things into your life on a regular basis,
Yeah.
right? That has to be a way you
Yeah.
do life. Otherwise, you're never going to get any stronger
Right. Yeah, I like that. Just
physically and intellectually, right?
right. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I'm just kind of relating that to our lives and what we're going through as a family, with raising kid girls. We have two girls, like raising kids and girls. And if my husband gets on me, he's like, "You try to front run so many other problems." And he was right. And I was like, "I have got to stop doing that because." And then I was like, well, "Why am I doing that?" It's because my mom didn't do it, and so
Mhm.
I feel like I'm trying to make up for my parent, how I was parented, but it's not helping anybody. So I had to really take a look at what am I doing? How am I front running these problems? And then I would get upset because I would front run so many things that I was creating these helpless kids. Like when I did need them to actually show up and do something, I was like, "What's wrong with you? Don't you know how to use the?" And they're like,
Yeah.
"No, you don't let us use the washing machine." So I was like, "Okay, all right." Like we're
Right.
having, so I had to really take a look at what I was doing and how I was showing up. And I want them to struggle. I want not to the point that it's, a life or death situation, but like, it's good to struggle. Like,
Yeah.
it sucks and it's hard in the moment, but you will come out of this. You are gonna be stronger for it, and this is life. Like,
Yeah.
this is life.
My wife, she had when my son was really, really young and he was crawling around and getting on like a chair or something, I would always hop up and my wife would say, stop. My wife's PhD, she was way smarter than me. She studies kids and I would say, hey, he's going to fall. And my wife's response always was once.
Mhm.
And it was that's how he's going to learn. And the goal was, a parent was, don't let him fall off something that he can't recover from.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But if he falls off a 2-inch chair, he's going to bonk his booty and he'll cry. And then he'll realize I need to be careful on top of those things. Now, if he gets on top of the refrigerator, yeah, he dies if he falls off that. So he can't do that, right? So
Right.
there's that balance there. But what I think, I love the word you use, the words you use, front runner. Front running is a Xanax to parents.
Mm.
That's the way we numb ourselves out from the wild, scary, reckless world that's out there. And then that brings us back to, oh, I got to crawl out of my tent and look to the sky and say, dear God, please rain or my kids will die. Like I have to go out and say, dear God, please take care of my kids because I can't be with them everywhere all the time. And that's
Right.
me. That's me
Right.
releasing that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's higher power. That lets my body go.
Yeah.
All right. I'm doing the best I can do with what I got.
Right. Yeah, I like that. And I guess on some level I didn't realize I was doing that, but it's having faith that this is bigger than me. This is so much bigger than me.
Yeah.
And someone else, God has it. Like it's gonna be okay.
And I'm going to
Um
teach them the best lessons I can. I'm going to make
mhm.
them tough. I'm going to help them become tough. I'm not going to abdicate because we all know people who are like, like in medical situations, like, we'll just pray it out. And I'm like, well, also stop
Right.
smoking. Right. And they're like,
Right.
well, we'll just, so
Yeah.
I think it's both and, right. I think it's both
Sure.
and.
Yeah, sure. So, this is just a great book. I cannot wait to get through it even more and finish it. I'm gonna pass it on to my kids. Hope they'll, give it a look. One of them's reading Atomic Habits right now, so I'm hopeful that.
Oh, that's a way better book than mine. So yeah, have them
Well, they're
start with
just
that.
different.
Have them start with that one. Yeah.
This is such a great book for people, like you said, who they need a roadmap. They need somebody just to like sit down with them and say, look, this is how you get through anxiety. This is how you build a life based on feeling free and feeling I guess what's the word? Just free, from anxious thoughts and feelings. What so I don't know, what's next for you? Like are you even thinking what's next or are you kind of just doing this book
Yeah.
right now?
I think what's next is really kind of stepping back and looking at what is the, like, I think a book is a good place to start. And I think I'm beginning to wonder if books are serving also as a Xanax too. I think we have a culture that is addicted to more information, and we look at getting more info in place of taking action on things. And as a therapist, you know this, that I think a lie the mental health community that I'm a part of has given over the last couple hundred years, especially the last 100 years, is good mental health is just getting all the right thoughts in the right order. And I don't think that's true. I think you have to act differently. You have to do different things. And there's a reciprocal nature to action and belief and action. And so I hear all over the country, I want to be a better dad, but my dad left or my dad screamed a lot. And so I want to be a better dad. I don't know what that looks like. And or I want to be a better, I'm super anxious. I just had my third kid. I'm really anxious and I don't want to be, but I don't have a picture of what a non-anxious mom looks like because my mom was bananas, right? And so I think the next iteration is creating some things like, here's what this looks like so that people can have an image of it. Because I can describe basketball to you all day long.
Mhm.
I can tell you all about Michael Jordan, but if you walk into a gym and you've never been in one and there's just a ball laying there, you don't know how to play basketball until you see it, right? You got to see it. And so I think now when people are like, hey, I keep yelling at my wife, you have any books I can read? I'm like, no, stop yelling at your wife, right?
Right.
Let's stop that.
Yeah.
And then let's get to the bottom of why has my body identified that as a way to solve this problem where I feel small or I feel less than, or I feel like she's going to leave me or whatever. And so I think figuring out what it looks like to create some pictures, whether that's continuing my show or what that looks like, but to provide pictures of what living differently looks like. Because I think that's what we need.
Workshops. So like
Exactly.
workshops going,
Exactly.
ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
a kind of like a workshop for different issues or different categories of stuff like
Right.
marriages, dads, moms. That's really cool. I like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, you'd be really
Marriages I put on a marriage conference with my friend Rachel a couple weeks ago, and it was the most important thing I think I've ever been a part of. And
yeah,
so but they got to see it, and they got to see us, and our spouses joined us, and it was really hard, and it was really vulnerable, and I think it was pretty powerful. So I think that's where we're headed.
very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. I like that. Well, I am a marriage and family therapist, so if you need need other
Oh, I love
therapists.
that. Cool. Yes, that's fantastic. What's the number one thing you're seeing with couples right now?
Well, I work, primarily with a military branch here in South
Okay.
Carolina. I work for them. It's reintegration, just coming
Ah,
after being separated, coming back.
yep.
It's a lot. And
Yeah.
then also pre-deployment, like what's it gonna there's the anxiety about what's gonna especially for the couples that haven't been through it before.
Yep.
It's like what's this gonna be like? What how can I do this on my own? And so much stuff comes up. So that's mainly where I focus. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think I love a self-help book. I mean, you should see my nightstand. Like you should
Oh,
see my
dude, me too.
I'm like, I got your book, I got 12 Rules for Life, I got
Oh yeah.
Wayne Dyer. I mean, I got them all. And then my husband's
Mhm.
like, "Are you ever gonna get through any of those?" I just like read a little bit at a time. I'm
Yeah.
a self-proclaimed, junkie when it comes to personal growth and development. So thank you so much for your time. I hope everybody goes out and gets this book. We'll put a link in the show notes for you guys to check it out, as well as your it's a daily show, right? You have a daily show every day?
It's it releases 3 times a week, the Dr.
Okay.
John Delony show, and then I also co-host the Ramsey show with Dave Ramsey a couple times a week.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I do catch that. So, is there anything else you would like to share with our listeners?
No, thank you so much for your hospitality, Lisa. I'm really grateful
Oh,
for you.
yeah. If you're ever in South Carolina, let me know.
Oh, absolutely. That'd be
Okay,
fun.
cool. Thanks, John.
Appreciate
Thanks
you.
for being here. Okay,
Take
take
care.
care. Bye-bye.